You are standing in a parking lot outside a Kroger at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning, and nobody in that lot knows what you are worth. The cart return is 6 spaces to your left. A woman in scrubs is loading groceries into a Kia. A man with a reflective vest is collecting carts in the heat. You are wearing a gray t-shirt that cost $34 and New Balance 990s that you have owned since 2021. Your car is a Honda Civic 2019, silver, with a dent above the rear left wheel that you never fixed because the quote came back at $340 and it didn't seem worth it. You are holding a receipt for $67.43. Eggs, bread, the store-brand orange juice because the Tropicana was 180s more and you noticed. Nobody is looking at you. Nobody has a reason to. You look like someone who is careful with money in the way that people who don't have much money are careful. You look like the parking lot. You look like Tuesday. Your net worth as of 6:47 this morning is $560 million. Not in real estate you can't touch, not in a company that might collapse, not in a number someone told you on paper. Liquid, indexed, compounding, sitting in accounts that have not been opened on a phone in 11 days because there is nothing to do. The number just grows. You bought orange juice from the wrong shelf. The number still grows. Nobody knows. That is not an accident. You were 31. You were tired in the specific way that people get tired when they have been doing everything right and nothing is moving. You had $14,000 in a savings account at a Chase branch on Figueroa Street that smelled like carpet cleaner and recycled air. You had a job doing procurement logistics for a mid-size manufacturer in Riverside that nobody outside of Riverside had heard of. You made $58,000 a year. You drove 34 minutes each way. You ate lunch at your desk 4 days out of 5 because the sandwich place downstairs charged $11.50, and that felt like a decision you could control. You were not miserable. That was almost the problem. You were fine. The apartment was 18 square meters on the 3rd floor of a building on Magnolia Avenue with a window that faced a parking structure. You had a plant that was mostly alive. You had a bookshelf with books you had read and some you hadn't. You had a Tuesday that looked exactly like the Tuesday before it. In March of that year, you put $8,400 into a Vanguard index fund and left it there, not because someone told you to. Because you had read the same paragraph in 3 different books, and the paragraph kept saying the same thing, and eventually you decided to believe it. Nobody celebrated that. There was no moment. You closed the browser tab and made coffee. Your coworker Dennis asked you that Friday if you were doing anything for the weekend. You said not really. You had just made the most important financial decision of your life, and it looked like nothing from the outside. It felt like nothing too. That was the point. That was always going to be the point. You left the 8,400 alone. Year 2, you watched a man named Kevin lose $340,000 in 14 months. You knew Kevin from the Riverside office. Kevin was smart in the way that made people listen to him at meetings. Kevin had read things. Kevin had opinions about markets and timing and sectors, and he said them with the specific confidence of someone who had been right twice and remembered both times perfectly. In November, he told you he had moved everything into 3 positions he was certain about. By the following January, he had stopped mentioning it. By March, he had stopped coming to the Thursday lunch. You didn't say anything to Kevin. There was nothing to say. What you understood watching Kevin was not that he was stupid. He wasn't. What you understood was that interesting is expensive. The desire to have a story to tell, to be the person at the table who did something, who moved, who acted, that desire costs more than almost any bad investment individually. Kevin didn't lose $340,000 to bad math. He lost it to the need to be interesting about money. Boring doesn't have a story. That's why it works. You kept putting money into VTSAX every month. $600 when that was all there was. $900 when the logistics role got a title change and a small raise. Honda 100 after you moved to a cheaper apartment on the east side of Riverside and told nobody why you moved. The new apartment had a window that faced a wall. You didn't care. You were not living in the apartment. You were living inside a number that was growing too slowly to see. Slow is invisible. Invisible is safe. Safe is the whole strategy. People kept asking you what you were doing with your money. You kept saying not much. That was the most accurate thing you ever said about any of it. Not much. Every single month. For years. Marcus asked you at a barbecue in Pasadena in the summer of year 6 what you drove. You said a Civic. He nodded the way people nod when they are already thinking about something else. Marcus had just leased a BMW 5 Series in Alpine White, and he had mentioned it twice since you arrived. Not bragging exactly, just mentioning. The way you mention things when the thing is doing work for you, when the thing is telling people something you want them to know. You let the Civic tell people nothing. That was a choice you made early and kept making. The car was not a sacrifice. The apartment in a suburb that nobody drove through on purpose was not a sacrifice. The $34 gray t-shirt you wore to the barbecue while Marcus wore a linen shirt that cost somewhere around $180 was not a sacrifice. They were all the same decision repeated in different forms. Every time you didn't upgrade, the money went somewhere. Every time you looked unimportant, you became harder to see. There is a specific freedom in being underestimated. Nobody asks you for things. Nobody watches your moves. Nobody recalibrates their behavior around you because there is nothing in your behavior that signals you need to be recalibrated around. You are just someone in a Civic. You are just someone at the register buying store brand juice. You had $2.1 million by the time Marcus got his BMW. He didn't know. You didn't tell him. You talked about the burgers and whether the Dodgers had a real shot that year, and you drove home in the Civic with the dent above the rear left wheel that had been there since a parking structure in Burbank in 2020. The number kept moving. Nobody was watching you. That was the whole point. You had built something completely invisible, and the invisibility was not a side effect. It was the structure. Then the number crossed $2.1 million, and you didn't tell anyone. Then it crossed $5 million in a year, where the market did something nobody predicted and you were not watching closely enough to be scared, so you didn't sell, and the number kept moving. Then Sandra, at the Vanguard service line, called in March to confirm some paperwork, and she said your account number back to you in that flat professional voice, and you said, yes, that's correct. And she said, have a great day, and you said, you too, and that was the entire conversation about $11 million. Then you bought a duplex in Tucson for $340,000 cash through an LLC that had your initials and a number and nothing else. Frank at the title company shook your hand and said congratulations, and you said thank you and drove back to the airport in a rental Corolla and ate a sandwich from a gas station because the airport food was $16. Then the index kept compounding. Then the duplex threw off $200 a month. Then you added a second property in Mesa 18 months later for $298,000, and that one threw off $1,900 a month. Then you reinvested everything. Then you kept going to work in Riverside because stopping felt like movement, and movement felt like risk. Then it was $47 million, and you were 41 years old, and you were still eating lunch at your desk. Then the compounding did something that compounding does after long enough. It stopped feeling like growth and started feeling like weather. Something that happened whether you looked or not. Something that didn't need you. Then it was $560 million. You were 52. You were in the same gray t-shirt. The number had 17 digits, and you had not upgraded the t-shirt. You didn't need to. Daniel called you on a Wednesday in October at 7:23 in the evening. You knew from the way he started the sentence. There was a half second before the ask where the voice changes registers slightly, where it becomes careful, where the person on the other end is no longer talking to you, but to a version of you. They need to exist. You had heard that half second before. You recognized it the way you recognize weather before it arrives. He wanted $90,000 to open a restaurant in Silver Lake. He had a space, he had a chef, he had a concept that he described for 4 minutes while you sat on your couch in the suburban house that nobody drove past on purpose and looked at a wall. The concept was good. Daniel was smart. The restaurant industry fails at a rate that has nothing to do with smart or good. You said no, not because $90,000 was meaningful to you. It wasn't. Not because you didn't trust Daniel. You did. You said no because giving Daniel $90,000 would require explaining why $90 was not a significant decision for you. And that explanation would change every conversation you had with Daniel for the rest of your lives. The money wasn't the problem. The knowing was the problem. You helped him find an SBA loan instead. You spent 3 hours on a Sunday going through his business plan with him, line by line. You found 2 errors in his projected food costs that would have destroyed his margin by month 4. He opened the restaurant 14 months later without your $90,000, and it is still open now. He never knew what you were worth. He still doesn't. There are 4 people in your life who know the real number. 2 of them are lawyers. One of them is an accountant named Patricia, who you have met in person exactly twice. The 4th is you. That is not loneliness exactly. It is something without a clean name. The day the number crossed $560 million, you were in a conference room in Century City, signing documents that Patricia had prepared across 14 pages with small print and yellow sticky tabs that said sign, here in a font that felt too casual for what was happening. The printer in the corner was out of toner. The third page came out streaked and faint, and Patricia apologized, and you said it's fine and signed it anyway. The window faced a building that faced another building. Someone had left a paper cup on the ledge from a meeting that happened before yours. You signed all 14 pages. Patricia said, everything looks good. You said great. You took the elevator down alone and walked to the parking structure on Avenue of the Stars and drove the Civic back toward the freeway. You stopped at the Kroger on the way. It was 9:14 on a Tuesday morning. A woman in scrubs was loading groceries into a Kia. A man with a reflective vest was collecting carts in the heat. You locked the car and walked toward the entrance, and the doors opened automatically, the way they always do. The way they open for everyone, regardless of anything. At Register 4, there was a guy you had seen before. Not someone you knew, just someone who was always there when you came on Tuesdays. He had a pencil behind his ear that you had never once seen him use. You put the orange juice on the belt. He didn't look up. You didn't need him to.